chapter 5 is going to get us into an area that I think is going to be a bit challenging. But I diagrammed it for myself to make it a little easier. I have a little flow chart. It's one of the things that when you study medieval philosophy, which is a lot based on Aristotle, Aristotle was very good at creating categories. That is, in order to learn what to do and what not to do, or it's to set categories, trying to look at the entire gamut of existence. So chapter 5 is going to give us the categories of all existence. So think of all the things that exist in the universe, and we are going to categorize them in neatly organized boxes.
Does that include Hashem?
You wait.
Okay,
Wait. So he says there are really two major categories in the created world. There are entities that are material, and there are entities that are non-material. What do we usually term non-material? Spiritual. Right? So we have material entities and spiritual entities. The material beings are all the things that we can experience through our senses. How many senses do we have? 5. So we have 5 senses, which are, although it's elementary, it's important to do so that we're all holding on what the 5 senses are. What are they?
See,
Sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. Okay? And then there is, don't forget, the 6th sense of seeing dead people. Right? But let's leave that for another class. So we have 5 senses. So everything that is in the universe is either in the box of material or spiritual. Then we get into the box of material. And in the box of material, we have 2 types of boxes. Okay? So there are 2 more boxes. The first box is what we would call extraterrestrial existence. That doesn't mean, that's a bad word because in English we use that for aliens. But extraterrestrial means, extra means above or outside of the earth, right? So any physical being, any physical entity outside of the planet Earth, right, that is material. And we have stuff that exists on Earth, right? So we have really 2 boxes: stuff that exists on Earth and stuff that exists outside of Earth. What exists outside of Earth that is material, that we experience through our senses?
sun,
Stars,
sunlight,
sun,
moon,
planets,
the cold,
comets, right? All the things that, even if we take a telescope and we look at and we experience the rings of Saturn, right? Or we see distant galaxies, all of those things we're experiencing through our senses. Even if we say that we have a radar, a telescope that is a radio, that is picking up electrical waves, that also means that we're experiencing this, through our senses. Okay? So there's lots and lots of things that are outside the earth that is physical, says the Ramchal. And there are all the things on earth that we experience physically with our senses. Animals, right? Plants, rocks, inanimate objects, animate objects, you name it. Lots and lots of things that we experience through our senses. But that's not what we're really interested in, right? Because we want to see what's in the other box. What's in the spiritual box, right? Because the material box we all are very much familiar with because it's always around us. to such an extent that we are actually jaded when we experience them, as opposed to a child. When children experience something of the physical world, they get very excited. They're like, oh my God, did you see that? That's so cool. Let's do it again. Right? Again, want to do it again. Want to do it again. Because our experience, we get so used to it that, it's fine for us. It's like water, Watch a kid that his fingers turned like, rubbery, from being in the first time. They're like, look at my arm, look at my hand, look at this, right? And you can sell them anything. You tell them, now you can climb walls. And it's like, really, it's so cool. But we get jaded. For us, it's no big deal. We don't really pay attention to all these things. So what's in another box? What's in the box of spiritual entities? So in that box, we talk about all the entities that we cannot experience through our senses. Does it mean we can't experience them?
No.
No. It just means that we're not going to be able to see them. We're not going to be able to hear them. We're not going to be able to taste them. We're not going to be able to feel them. Does that cover everything, or did I miss something? And smell them. That's what we're missing.
Gravity or do you feel gravity?
Heck yeah.
What about radio waves or gravity?
No, radio waves you experience. You can if you had a machine, right, that would translate those into sounds, you could definitely hear it. Yeah.
So when you have a spiritual experience, are you saying that you don't physically feel it?
I'm not talking about that just yet. But the question is, again, is something that we discussed a little bit in a different text that we were learning about the spiritual experience. A spiritual experience starts in the intellect, moves to the imagination, and so it appears as if you've experienced it, but it's not the same. It's much more cerebral. It's here.
Cerebral is outside of.
Cerebral is here,
Outside
in
of
the
material?
mind. In the mind.
Outside of material.
In the mind.
In the mind is outside of material.
I would say it starts out that way
Okay.
because the imagination is material.
How does not all of these senses start out sort of in that area too? So that they're all
Because what they do, this is Aristotelian. I'm not sure that that contemporary science would agree with this, but at least the model that Aristotle talks about, which I think has some merit in the way that it works, is that your senses pick up information or data and send it into your brain. So it's coming from outside to the inside. Whereas the spiritual experience seems to be coming from here.
So a memory then. I mean, it started.
It's not
first
memory,
outside.
because memory is a storage
Right.
faculty.
Yeah. But then once.
So whatever isn't there, it won't be there. A spiritual experience, as the Kuzari explained, it starts at the intellect, and then it translates itself into an an image or an imaginary form, and then that imaginary form is stored in the memory.
So memory can be the source of a spiritual experience.
No, cannot be the source of it.
It can be. I mean, it could be the source. You
It
recall a
can-
memory, and then you change the memory into something that never happened.
No.
Using your imagination. Is
No.
imagination spiritual? No.
No.
Okay, so I should wait.
Let's Why don't you wait till you have an experience and then no.
Isn't it true that physical things that are in the material world could bridge the gap, such as like music or wine, bringing on a spiritual experience?
It depends on what we define spiritual experience. If we say that the spiritual experience is the connection of the mind to God, then we would say no. It's not that music is the catalyst. What music allows for is for the body to be busy in this arena, to free the mind to be elevated and go to the next, to receive what God is sending down. But it's a different model. We're not there yet. It's not. So music is not the one that's causing it. It is an aspect of that you need something, that it could be like this. Okay. So what is the in the package or the box of the spiritual entities? So he says they are all the created entities that do not have a body. They're immaterial, cannot be experienced through our senses, and they are of two types. Right? So we have one box of all entities in the universe, two boxes in that, spiritual and material. Material, there's two boxes of upper and lower, right? Earthly and non-earthly. And then in the spiritual, we're going to have two boxes. Upper, that is high spiritual, and another box. So the first box is called neshamot, souls. And the second box is called incorporeal beings. Incorporeal beings is an English term borrowed from Latin. From the Latin term for a body is corpus, right? Ever heard of Corpus Christi, Texas? So that means the body of the Messiah, right? Corpus and Christi is the adjectival form of the word Messiah. So it is body. So when we say not a body, it means incorporeal. So we have souls and incorporeal entities. What are those? So he says the souls are created spiritual beings that were created to be placed in a body, to be bound in the body, and to be tied to the body, and to activate certain actions in the body at different times. That really is what a soul is. Okay? Now, what are the incorporeal entities? What? So he says, these are entities that are not destined to be placed in a body. Which are what? There are two parts. So in this box, there are two more boxes. And so you have to, like, one box, two boxes, and two boxes, and then box, and two boxes. What are on those two boxes? One is angels, and the other one, it's called, the word that the Ramchal uses are kochos, which are powers. Certain powers that exist in the universe. Okay?
That's in which category? The Neshamot category?
No. In the Neshama, that's it. Close that box.
Oh, incorporeal entities is...
Their incorporeal entities is made up of two boxes. One box is angels, and the other one is kochos. How does he translate kochos? What does he say?
Yeah, forces.
Forces. Powers, forces. Okay? Yes.
Forces like.
So that's the question mark. What are they? And we're going to spend time learning about what they are. Okay? We're going to learn what they are. Yes?
Is there any reason why he said Kochot first, and they, why are they in the first category and angels in the second category, or is that just happening?
Nothing is just. There's a reason for it. Because in terms of the elevated status, if we created digrations, the forces are on a higher spiritual level than the angels.
We have God, and then we have
Kochos,
and then angels.
mm-hmm. But you added God into this.
I know.
God is completely outside the box.
Yeah.
You stuck him back in the box.
Yeah.
So then you're going to have to deal with that on your own. I'm not saying it. So he is saying that within the universe, which is a separate box, right? God obviously is not in that box. And that box is made up of two categories. And then you have two categories in each of these. And then two categories, and so on and so forth.
I've also heard there's multiple realms or something, and that this is the universe what we think of as Olam or something? And
Yeah.
there's other ones?
Great.
Is he talking about within all of those?
He's talking about all creation. He doesn't use the word world or universe.
Okay.
He says, in Chelkei Klal HaBriya. In all of creation, there are two parts.
Okay.
Two boxes. A box of physical beings or entities and non-physical. And then the divisions. Okay? So then he says, and they are of different ranks and levels. Right? The angels are in different levels, the forces are in different levels. There are multiple levels. In the same way that in the physical world, we tend to divide them according to some sort of ranking. We would say inanimate object, like rocks, are the lowest level, right? And then we have plants, Moshe. After plants, what would you put? Animals? You sure? So what type of animals would you go on the bottom of the pile?
Insects.
Insects. Then what? Birds, not fish? Right? The fish. But people usually put fish, then they put birds. No, then they say after fish you have reptiles. Right? After reptiles you have birds. And after birds you have mammals. And where do you put at the top? Dolphins. Right? Because dolphins are very smart. They convince us it's okay to eat tuna, but it's not okay to eat dolphins. For us, it's not an issue because dolphins are not kosher. But for non-Jews, why don't they eat dolphin? Because the dolphins told them, don't eat us, eat those guys. That's really smart. Right? Like, why can't I eat you? What's wrong?
In Japan, they eat dolphins.
Yeah. Is there anything wrong to eat a dolphin? It's a joke, but it's interesting if you try to think which animal, how would you... We usually, we use intelligence as a sign of importance. Why don't we use strength as a category? What's the strongest animal?
An elephant.
No.
Hippo.
Probably an ant.
Oh, first you're stuck for size.
Right? Shouldn't it be?
Size strength ratio. Okay.
Yeah, size, right? So
China.
the ant is the top of the universe. And that could you imagine if you saw like, what? This is ridiculous. Well, they're stronger than us. And you're like, no, I can pick like 100 of them. Yes, the problem is that they could pick 100 of them could probably pick you. I don't know, 100, but. So there's ranking in the physical world, and there's also ranking in the spiritual world. Okay? And you could spend a long time figuring out, learning the rankings and the madrigas, the levels of the spiritual entities in our creation. Did you want to ask something,
So
Ishai?
why is it that we do rank things that are of a higher, like intellectual, that are of a higher?
So why? Why do you think?
Because that's what we think is the most important thing, or that's what
That's what the Torah tells us. What defines us from from the rest? It's the ability that we have that they don't.
So I feel like you're saying it's far-fetched to start.
No, I'm just saying. I was just. The reason that we do it is because the Torah says, right? The Onkelos says, what's the differentiating principle between us and the rest? Is ruach memalala. That is, we have the ability for intelligible speech.
The dolphins have that too. Well,
But they don't do geometry. They don't do logic.
sure.
Yeah, they don't praise
They don't have a kal vachomer.
They don't have
They don't.
thumbs.
They don't do this.
Yeah.
They're like
They don't have a thumb.
the Gemara says this. Rashi says that. They don't. Okay, good. And he says that there are laws that govern the activities of the incorporeal or spiritual beings according to their levels. Okay? And such that we can call them, that there are many different types of beings or entities in that category. Okay? So there are many types of angels, different types of angels. There are different levels, there are different types of forces, there are different types of levels, and they do different things at different times. Right? In the same way that we understand that the sun has a different function than the moon, which has a different function than the planet Jupiter, right? What's the role of planet Jupiter, do you know?
To roll around in a big gaseous state.
Yeah, so why does it do that? So I read actually scientists who said that really his role in our planetary system is to deflect asteroids from hitting the Earth. That's what it does. That's why it's so big, so massive, and it blocks a lot of the asteroids that otherwise probably would have destroyed the planet Earth. Coincidence?
I think not.
I rest my case. I'm not an astrophysicist. I studied astronomy, but I'm not an expert. So, and once I moved out of LA, I don't ask me like what star is this. When I was in LA, I knew, I knew. But I tried at Berkeley, actually, to figure it out, and I don't know. I don't know if I was successful. I thought I was, but nobody checked me. So it's okay, Mike. It's only going to get worse, Moshe. It's only going to get worse.
In LA, you only know Hollywood stars.
Right. Good. That was a good comeback. That was a good comeback. I knew him from the Valley. So he says to us, he explains to us that there is one being in the whole system that is right in the middle between all these boxes. What is it? Humans. We are made up of two components, material and immaterial, or incorporeal, from an entity that comes from the upper realm and is put down in the bottom realm, which is a human being.
So we have our own box.
We are a separate box. We unite all the boxes. We unite all the boxes. I heard a very interesting, beautiful idea. That the Arizal says that all the powers of the universe that exist, like in the world, are found in the human being. So a human being can have the quality of a lion. He can have a quality of a bear. He can have a quality of a wolf. He can have all these things. Okay, that's why it makes him so dangerous. Because a lion only has the power of a lion, but he doesn't have the power of a bear or a wolf or a dolphin or a whale. But we have the powers, all of them, in us. So we can be much more destructive in the world than anything else. And without the Torah, we would use all these forces and essentially ruin the whole system. Ben?
Nothing, I was just saying, so all the boxes, including the extraterrestrial.
There's an aspect. Yeah, well, remember, there's two major boxes:
Yeah, so including
physical and non-physical. So we're made up of both of that.
Okay, so
We have a physical and non-physical. We have something that is non-physical, that is spiritual from the upper world, right? That's the neshama, and then we have a body that is also, part of the lower world. Yeah.
So there's bodies like a wolf or a bear, and then there's the spiritual quality or definition of a wolf or a bear.
I wouldn't use the word spiritual because the language that is used by many of the rabbis is they have a nefesh. They don't have a ruach. They don't have a neshama. The Ramchal is talking about a neshama. So we wouldn't say that a donkey has a neshama. We say the donkey has a nefesh. And the nefesh of an animal is different from a nefesh of a ben adam, says the Rambam in Shmona Prakim. We use nefesh, correct. It says nefesh. But a nefesh of a human being is not a nefesh of a dog. It's different.
Yeah.
it does similar things, but it's not the same thing. You with me? That's where, categories are very, very important. So that in the category of animals, they have an animal nefesh. We are in some way an animal also, but we don't have the same, and we have a nefesh. And it is an animal nefesh, but it's different from theirs. A donkey nefesh is different from a wolf nefesh, which is different from a babono monkey.
Bonobo. But they're in
Bonobo.
the same category of nefesh.
But we also have a nefesh. But it's not the same type of nefesh. They don't have the same type of nefesh as us. There are three categories of nefesh, according to the Rambam. There's the nefesh of vegetative entities. There's a nefesh of animals, and then there's the human. Right? Because vegetation also has certain forces or abilities. Right? All plants can reproduce. They grow. Right? And they have to have an ability to get rid of waste. Right? They have to have that. So that requires a force to allow them to do that. An animal has those three plus more, which is what? Locomotion. Animals can move, right? They have different senses. So that requires also a nefesh to allow to do that. And we have another layer. We can do all what plants do. We can reproduce, we can digest food, we can get rid of waste, we can also grow. But we also have locomotion, we have imagination. But on top of it, we have the ability to do mathematics.
What are the three categories? You have vegetative.
Is the nutritive, having the ability to take on nutrition and get rid, reproduce and grow.
Reproduce.
Yeah.
Reproduce, growth, and reproduce. And we have locomotive.
And then you have locomotive, and then you have
sensory.
sensory, all that's animals. And sensory leads to imagination.
So we have imagination.
And there are philosophers who hold that animals have the ability to imagine.
We don't.
What?
We don't hold
Of
that?
course we do. No. Oh, you're asking, do we hold? I don't know. There's different views.
So what's the fifth category then if it makes us unique to
Rational thought.
rational thought? Okay.
Rational thought.
Animals don't have rational thought.
Can't play chess.
Could it be that they just can't play chess because they don't have a thumb and a hand to play chess with, but they'd be capable of?
No, the Torah tells us that we have an ability that is qualitatively, not quantitatively,
Okay.
qualitatively different. There's no comparison.
Okay.
It's like comparing our mental capacities to a bear is like comparing, a broom to an ape.
Even with trained animals, it's the same thing because it still comes, the source of it comes from human beings.
Yeah.
Even dolphins.
Look, dolphins are the ones that are swimming in our little pools. We're not swimming in their pools.
If they had arms and legs. That's different.
That's the whole point.
Okay. I get it. The Torah
They're much stronger than us.
People like to swim with the dolphins.
Yes. Yeah. But guess what? We get to go home at the end of the day. They're stuck there. Right? Shemu has to do the show 3 times a day.
Didn't Shemu kill someone?
What?
I thought Shemu killed someone.
Yeah, well, guess what? Did he let him go? They didn't let him go. He's just still there now. Like, you don't want to jump. No one's going to go in the water with you. But you better jump. I'm being, I'm joking, but think about this. We have mental capabilities that allow us. The animals have mental capabilities to allow them for survival. Our mental capabilities are much beyond our for what we need to survive. Right? It's like, if God created a toaster, and this toaster could scan, right, and fax, and also make you dinner, That would be a pretty incredible toaster. That's our mind. It's, yes, you need, the portion of your mind that you actually need to survive is very small. But look what human beings are capable of doing. We can go into any geographical area and not only survive, but flourish. That's the gift, that's the bracha of the Kadosh Baruch Hu in the Torah. And it's not about the strength of our you know, of our arms or muscles, or for sure not. It's our mind. It's our ability for long-term planning, for, you know, doing all sorts of complicated, and we're able to produce so much, to have such leisure, to be able to, you know, spend our life studying the meaning of, I don't know, you name it. Go into any department in the university and ask them, like, what do you guys study? And they'll tell you things, you're like, why is this important? And they'll tell you, oh, the theater of the oppressed is one of the most greatest important things that we have to understand. And why? Because without it, you can't survive. It's like, what are you talking about? You don't need this. You know, go hunt. You know, we don't need it. It's a blessing unto, it's part of what. Okay, let's continue. So he says that there's an aspect of us that is the nefesh, the neshama comes from the upper box, and the guf from the lower box. And then look at what he says, Yishai. And you have to be very careful here that you don't mistakenly think that there is similarity between animals and human beings. Because the nefesh of the animals is material. The nefesh, he's not talking about a neshama. The nefesh is tied to material.
The blood.
Okay. I think it's a little bit more complicated. I don't want to get into it right now because we're almost at the end. We could talk about what, at least the way that the Rambam understands, the way that we saw in the Kuzari understands the nefesh. Bring some other makoros in terms of a nefesh. Nefesh is the actualization of the potential of the material. So whatever the material is, of, let's say you have the material of a donkey, right? What's the difference between a dead donkey and a donkey that's alive? Nefesh. That's it. There's no difference. The legs are still there. The blood is still in the body, right? Everything's there. The muscle, you haven't taken anything out. He's just lying dead on the floor. What's the difference? Nefesh. That's the actualization of the material. It makes it do what it needs to do.
That's
And that is
material.
that the Ramchal is saying that is an aspect of the material component. It's connected to that world or that dimension. Because you like to talk about dimensions, Isha. So that is tied to that dimension as opposed to the neshama, which is, it comes from a different dimension, a different box altogether. Okay? So he says you have to be very careful. So he says, and minyano nimtza gam ken beven adam. And a human being also has a nefesh. But the nefesh and the neshama are two different things. And they're not something that, you know, it's not a quantitative, that one is greater than the other. If you just had a little bit more of this stuff, the nefesh would turn into a neshama. They're a different category. It's a completely different category. Like the comparison to what I said. You know, a broom to, you know, a donkey. They're not in the same, you can't make a comparison between the two. So he says, the neshama is a creation unto itself. It is separated, or is an aspect of it is incorporeal or separated from the body, but it's tied or connected to the body due to a divine decree. Right? So because God commanded it to be so, the neshama is connected to the body and is in there. Questions? Yeah, Moshe.
Intellectuality is, I don't think, can be measured. Is that,
Intellectuality?
yeah,
What is
how
that?
intellectual someone is.
The intellect? Yeah. What about it?
Is that spiritual or physical? Because I've heard that it's spiritual.
I would agree with you. It's non-physical. It's non-physical. The intellect in many philosophers in the way that they discuss the intellect, they explain that the intellect is not physical. It is a capability that a human being has. Because why is it, and what is the example that they explain? They give us an explanation of how do we know that it's not physical? Because the older you get, where your physicality is weaker and weaker, your eyes, don't work so well, your ears, your sense of smell, your taste, touch, all of those, they weaken, but your intellect doesn't. Your ability to do abstract thinking is not affected by the deterioration of your physicality, to an extent. I mean, certainly there are situations where a person is sick, right? So, but it's not necessarily the case that as the body, grows older, it necessarily affects the intellect, that the intellect is unable to continue to do abstract thought. It's actually vice versa. You can actually get your mind gets stronger and stronger. So that is the evidence or the argument that is brought to support that the intellect is non-physical. Let's stop here for the mincha.